For what purpose was a ziggurat used? As a temple. What title was used for the king in ancient Egypt? Pharaoh. What time measuring device did the ancient Egyptians invent? The sundial. In the five elements theory related to the five planets, what color symbolizes the Yellow River? Yellow, symbolizing the center. Who is the main character of the Epic of Gilgamesh? Gilgamesh, king of Uruk. What palace of the Minoan civilization is associated with the legend of a great labyrinth? Palace of Knossos. Which civilization conquered and was influenced by the Minoan civilization after its decline? Mycenaean civilization. What is the title of one of Homer's epics that is set during the Trojan War? The Iliad. What enabled the Mycenaean civilization to trade actively with Egypt and Asia Minor? Long-distance trade and economic growth. According to tradition, which city was founded by surviving Trojan nobles after the Trojan War? Rome, a legendary city. Which fresco of the Minoan civilization depicts a ritual involving the sacred bull? The bull leaping fresco. Which ancient Greek civilization declined after the Trojan War? The Mycenaean civilization. In ancient Greece, what dialect was used in some regions including Sparta? The Doric dialect. In ancient Greece, what games were held every 4 years in honor of Zeus? The Olympic Games. What was the temple located at Delphi that was dedicated to the god of the sun and prophecy? The Temple of Apollo. Which of the Olympian gods symbolized war and valor? Ares. Which goddess of love and beauty was said to have been born from the foam of the sea? Aphrodite. Which ancient Greek scientist discovered the principle of buoyancy? Archimedes. Which ancient Greek physician known as the father of Western medicine is this referring to? Hippocrates. Which general led Athens to victory at the Battle of Marathon? Miltiades. Which philosopher regarded the boundless, the apeiron, as the origin of the world? Anaximander. Which philosopher described the ordering principle of the cosmos as nous or mind? Anaxagoras. Which philosopher, influenced by Socrates, founded the Cynic school? Antisthenes. Which philosopher founded the Stoic school? Zeno of Citium. What is the name of the philosophical doctrine that treats sensory pleasure as the supreme value? Hedonism. What is the title of Aristotle's work in which he systematized ethics? Nicomachean ethics. What is the logical method of argumentation used to reach truth? Dialectic. What is the principle by which we understand the world through reason? Logos. In Stoic philosophy, what term denotes the state of having overcome emotional disturbance? Apatheia. In Athens, what was the process by which citizens enacted and revised laws? Legislation. In ancient Athens, what was the system responsible for managing and operating the finances of the state? Public finance administration. What was the tax system imposed on citizens in Athens? The taxation system. In Athens, what was the fundamental right that allowed citizens to participate in politics? The right to take part in government. In ancient Greece, what was the system of roads that was maintained to enable travel between city-states? Road network. What was the crucial naval battle in which the Greek fleet defeated the Persian navy? The Battle of Salamis. What was the most powerful characteristic of the Spartan army? Strong cohesion and training. What was the final battle in which Greece drove out Persia after the Battle of Plataea? Battle of Mycale. What famous building did Athens construct using the funds of the Delian League? Parthenon Temple. After the victory in the Battle of Marathon, which soldier brought the news to the citizens of Athens? Phidippides. What was the important road within the empire that Darius I built? The Royal Road. What major building project did Xerxes I expand within the Persian Empire? The expansion of Persepolis. What was the main language used to record administrative documents in the Persian Empire? Elamite. In which region did the Hittite civilization flourish? Asia Minor, Anatolia. What did the Hittites and Egypt conclude after the Battle of Kadesh? The world's first peace treaty. Why did Carthage grow into a powerful maritime empire? Because of its powerful navy and extensive trade network. Which mountain range did General Hannibal cross to attack Rome during the Second Punic War? The Alps. In which year was Carthage finally destroyed by Rome? Year 146 BC. What was the main type of warship used by the Carthaginian navy in battle? The quinquereme, 5-tiered war galley. In which battle did the Roman army finally defeat Hannibal? The Battle of Zama. What did Hannibal choose to do to avoid being captured by Rome? He took poison and committed suicide. In which battle did Hannibal win a major victory by launching a surprise attack on the Roman army? The Battle of Trasimene. In ancient Persia, how did the king punish officials whom he disliked? He confined them inside a beehive. In the ancient Maya civilization, what bodily modification did members of the royal family undergo to appear beautiful? They flattened their foreheads. In what way did the methods of conquest used by Cyrus II differ from those of other conquerors of his time? He respected the cultures of conquered lands and granted them autonomy. What was the political legacy of Cyrus II? A policy of tolerance and an efficient imperial administrative system. Cambyses II was a king of which empire? The Achaemenid Persian Empire. Which ancient civilization's kingdom did Cambyses II conquer and incorporate into the Persian Empire? Egypt. Which famous philosopher did Alexander the Great have as his tutor? Aristotle. After conquering Egypt, which famous city did Alexander the Great found? Alexandria. Among the main structures of Persepolis, where did the Persian king receive foreign envoys? The Apadana Palace. By what route was Gandharan art transmitted? Through cultural exchange along the Silk Road. Which reformer in ancient Athens laid the foundations of democracy? Cleisthenes. Where did the origins of the Hebrews begin? In Mesopotamia, especially Ur and the land of Canaan. What is the event called in which the Hebrews escaped from Egypt? The Exodus. Who was the first king when the Hebrews established a united monarchy? King Saul. What kind of treaty did Carthage conclude with Rome after Hannibal was defeated? A harsh peace treaty. In which battle did Hannibal win a great victory by launching a surprise attack on the Roman army? Battle of Trasimene. Which region was one of the places that Herodotus personally visited during his travels? Egypt. What was the capital of the Neo-Babylonian Empire founded by Nebuchadnezzar II? Babylon. What was the most central branch of the Persian Empire's army? The Immortals. Approximately how many soldiers made up Persia's Immortals unit? 10,000. What famous tactical formation made the Theban army renowned in ancient Greece? The deep phalanx. What was the center of learning founded by Aristotle? Lyceum. During a triumph, what famous phrase did the slave whisper behind the general to warn against arrogance? Memento mori. Remember that you must die. What were the forts and defensive frontiers built by the Roman legions called? Limes. Why were Roman legions able to march so quickly? Because of their sophisticated road network. In what year did the Western Roman Empire fall? Year 476 CE. How many kings ruled Rome during the Roman Kingdom period? 7. What were the main tribal groups of Rome during the Roman Kingdom period? Latins, Sabines, and Etruscans. What was the main political and commercial center of the city of Rome, the capital of the Roman Empire? The Forum. In the early Roman Empire, by whom were the governors of the provinces appointed? By the emperor or the Senate. In the Roman Republic, which office served as the highest magistracy with 2 officials elected each year? The consulship. What was the name of the wars that the Roman Republic fought against Carthage? The Punic Wars. At the end of the Roman Republic, what was the system in which 3 powerful leaders jointly ruled? The Triumvirate. What title did Octavian receive after becoming the first emperor of Rome? Augustus. The military tactics of the Seleucid dynasty were heavily influenced by which culture? Macedonian-style army tactics. What was the name of the revolt that broke out when Antiochus IV Epiphanes persecuted the Jewish religion? The Maccabean Revolt. Which Germanic tribes ruled the area of present-day Italy? Ostrogoths and Lombards. What harsh punishment was used in the Roman army to restore discipline after mutiny or defeat? Decimation, executing 1 out of every 10 soldiers. On what kind of relationship was the feudal system based? The relationship between lord and vassal. What kind of life was carried on within the manor? A self-sufficient life. What code were knights expected to follow? The Code of Chivalry. What was a representative city where the Renaissance began? Florence. What did Gutenberg invent? Movable type printing press. When did the Industrial Revolution take place? The late 18th century. What was a representative spinning or weaving machine invented during the Industrial Revolution? The spinning machine. During the Industrial Revolution, who made up a large proportion of factory workers? Women and children. How did production levels change as a result of the Industrial Revolution? They increased dramatically. Why did the gap between rich and poor widen as a result of the Industrial Revolution? Because income was distributed unequally. What strategy did Germany use to gain naval superiority during World War I? Submarine warfare. What style of warfare in World War I caused soldiers great suffering and led to prolonged stalemates at the front? Trench warfare. Which religion did Ashoka, king of India, embrace? Buddhism. According to what principle did the Code of Hammurabi impose punishments? An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. What did kings in Mesopotamia use as the basis of their authority? The will of the gods. In medieval Europe, what did kings prioritize over the law? The king's commands. What kind of expression did Renaissance art place greater importance on? Realistic representation. With the emergence of factory-based production, which economic structure was strengthened? The capitalist system. How did people's leisure time change after the Industrial Revolution? It gradually became more important. What new means of transportation emerged as a result of the Industrial Revolution? Trains and steamships. For what reasons were young men conscripted during World War I? Because of national duty and patriotism. How did King Darius of Persia govern his vast empire? By using governors and an extensive road network. What values did ancient thinkers mainly emphasize? Living rightly and sustaining the community. How did Alexander the Great integrate diverse cultures? Through a policy of cultural mixing, creating Hellenistic culture. What was the law code of the Byzantine Empire that greatly influenced European legal systems? The Justinian Code. According to Islam, how many times a day should believers pray? 5 times. The people of Mesopotamia carved writing into clay tablets. What was this script called? Cuneiform. Why is Mesopotamia called the cradle of civilization? Because cities, writing, and laws first emerged there. In year 1944, the Allies carried out a massive landing operation to liberate Europe. What was this operation called? The Normandy Landings, or D-Day. While occupying and invading many Asian countries during the war, what justification did Japan put forward? The idea of a Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere. Around which ocean did Portugal and Spain compete? The Atlantic Ocean. During the era of the Crusades, which Islamic leader threatened the Kingdom of Jerusalem? Saladin. In what areas does the spirit of the Renaissance continue to have an impact today? In art, science, education, and other fields. What city was the center of the French absolute monarchy? Versailles. What was characteristic of the rule of Alexander the Great? He promoted cultural fusion after conquest. Hagia Sophia later became a mosque. For what purpose was it originally built? As an Eastern Orthodox cathedral. Into which branch of Christianity did the religious tradition of the Byzantine Empire develop? Eastern Orthodoxy. Which regions are included in the Fertile Crescent, the area known as the cradle of the first civilizations? Mesopotamia. What language was mainly used in the Eastern Roman, Byzantine, Empire? Greek. Why did Japan attack the American naval base at Pearl Harbor during World War II? Securing dominance in the Pacific. During the Age of Discovery, what was the first major achievement of Magellan's fleet? Circumnavigation of the world. During World War I, what was the bloc led by Germany and Austria-Hungary called? The Central Powers. During the Reformation, which figure supported the German Peasants' War and called for social reform? Thomas Müntzer. What was one of the main reasons for Napoleon's failure in his invasion of Russia? Severe cold and logistical shortages. After India's independence, who served as its first prime minister? Jawaharlal Nehru. In ancient Egyptian religion, what was the name of the sun god? Ra. After the division of the Frankish kingdom, what is the present-day country that originated from the East Frankish kingdom? Germany. What was the name of the leading French king who took part in the Crusades? Louis IX. Among the ideas of John Locke that influenced the American Revolution, what is the doctrine asserting that governmental power comes from the people called? The doctrine of popular sovereignty. During the Tang dynasty in China, which major religion flourished through exchanges with the Western regions and exerted a profound influence on society as a whole? Buddhism. After the division of the Frankish kingdom, what region did Middle Francia become? Lotharingia. During World War II, what was the other Japanese city, besides Hiroshima, on which the Allies dropped an atomic bomb? Nagasaki. In Christianity, what was the name of the woman to whom Jesus is said to have appeared first after his resurrection? Mary Magdalene. Which English Enlightenment thinker advocated the social contract and natural rights? John Locke. Who, after the French Revolution, crowned himself emperor and went on to dominate Europe? Napoleon Bonaparte. What was the assassination that directly triggered World War I? The assassination in Sarajevo. Which Macedonian king created Hellenistic culture through his eastern conquests? Alexander the Great. What was the peace treaty concluded between the victorious powers and Germany after World War I? The Treaty of Versailles. What was the name of the city to which Emperor Constantine moved the capital of the Roman Empire and rebuilt it? Constantinople. What was the ideology that criticized capitalism and advocated the construction of a communist society? Marxism. What was the 1884 conference at which the European powers established the principles for the partition of Africa? The Berlin Conference. Who was the last leader of the Soviet Union who pursued policies of reform and openness? Mikhail Gorbachev. Which dynasty led India's Golden Age from the 4th to the 6th centuries and advanced Hindu culture? The Gupta dynasty. Which Enlightenment thinker argued for the social contract and emphasized direct democracy and popular sovereignty? Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Which emperor marked the beginning of the era of the 5 good emperors that led the Roman Empire to its height? Nerva. What was the movement in 19th-century Britain in which workers demanded political rights? The Chartist movement. What is the name of the early exchange that led China and the United States to begin diplomatic relations? Ping-pong diplomacy. Who was the president of South Africa who abolished the racial segregation policy known as apartheid? Nelson Mandela. Who founded Islam? Muhammad. Which international organization was founded after World War II to maintain international peace? The United Nations, UN. What was the name of the first artificial satellite that symbolized the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union? Sputnik 1. What was the war that broke out as Russia's southward expansion collided with British opposition? The Crimean War. Which naval battle, in which the U.S. Navy decisively defeated the Japanese Navy, became the turning point of the Pacific War? The Battle of Midway. During World War II, which Soviet city was besieged by German forces for nearly 900 days? Leningrad. Which emperor was the first to divide and rule the Roman Empire into East and West? Diocletian. Which Italian painter created The Last Supper? Leonardo da Vinci. Who was the first European explorer to arrive in the Americas in 1492? Christopher Columbus. What was the aid program implemented by the United States to revive the European economy after World War II? Marshall Plan. Who was India's first Prime Minister who led the non-aligned movement? Jawaharlal Nehru. Which Caribbean island did Columbus first reach? San Salvador Island. What was the religious policy that Bismarck pursued immediately after German unification? Kulturkampf. Who was the first astronaut to land on the Moon with Apollo 11 in 1969? Neil Armstrong. What is the name of the ancient Egyptian stele that provided the key to deciphering writing? Rosetta Stone. The ancient Olympic Games in Greece were held in honor of which god? Zeus. What was the rebellion launched by German peasants during the Reformation called? The German Peasants' War. Which major European country supported the American War of Independence? France. Which Venezuelan-born leader spearheaded the Latin American independence movements? Simón Bolívar. What was the name of the secret police organization in Nazi Germany? Gestapo. Which American general commanded the Incheon landing operation during the Korean War? MacArthur. What was the large-scale civil war between Catholics and Protestants in France called? The Huguenot Wars. Who served as the first Secretary-General of the United Nations at its founding? Trygve Lie. Which presidential couple in the Philippines sparked the 1986 People Power Revolution? The Marcos couple. What term is used for the 2016 referendum on the United Kingdom's withdrawal from the EU? Brexit. Which office in ancient Rome was created to protect the rights of the plebeians? Tribune of the plebs. What was the system by which Spain exploited indigenous labor in the New World called? Encomienda. What was the 1494 treaty in which Spain and Portugal agreed to divide the New World called? The Treaty of Tordesillas. What was the operation in which the Allies airlifted supplies to counter the Soviet blockade of 1948 called? The Berlin Airlift. What was the narrow pass battle in which Sparta fought bravely during the Persian Wars called? The Battle of Thermopylae. Who was the British inventor who built the first practical steam locomotive? George Stephenson. What is the abbreviation of the white supremacist organization in the American South that oppressed black people? KKK. What was the name of the first president of Ghana, the first independent country in Africa? Kwame Nkrumah. Who was the Southern peasant leader in the Mexican Revolution who cried, "Land and liberty"? Emiliano Zapata. What was the name of the Balkan conflict of the 1990s that ended with the Dayton Agreement in 1995? The Bosnian War. What was the name of the shogunate founded by Tokugawa that ruled Japan for more than 260 years? The Edo shogunate. What was the name of the Swedish scientist who laid the foundations of modern taxonomy? Linnaeus. What was the religion of the bodyguards who assassinated Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in 1984? Sikh. What was the title given to the supreme ruler of ancient Egypt? Pharaoh. What was the agreement between the Eastern and Western blocs to enhance security and human rights in Europe? Helsinki Accords. What is the name of the war that the United States launched in Afghanistan after the 9/11 attacks to overthrow the Taliban regime? Afghanistan War. What was the civil war between Protestants and Catholics that took place in Germany in the 16th and 17th centuries? The 30 Years' War. Which Viking explorer reached North America around the year 1000? Leif Erikson. Thank you for watching until the end. We'd love to hear your feedback and historical insights in the comments. Your support helps us create even more history quizzes. Let's keep exploring together.